Alright guys, okay, so I'm going to make a video that is pretty relevant for this channel. The channel's called World Class Happiness, and the video is the key to happiness. Alright, and I got asked this question by somebody the other day. I was at judo, just come off a session, and somebody on the edge had just bought one of my books, which was there's a stack of my books on the edge, and somebody had bought one. And I've got a guy there called Phil, who's he's a blind judo player. And obviously he hasn't read the book because there's no audio version at the moment anyway. And he said, oh, what's your book about, Dominic? And I said, it's called World Class Happiness. And he goes, oh, right, what's the key to happiness? And he just hit me with the question straight away, and I gave him the worst answer. I'm the worst person for being put on the spot. I don't think well on my feet. So I don't know, I just give him a bit of a pants answer, which was something along the lines of, always, you know, you just need to progress, and you know, and really there's, you know, there's lots of things, but I didn't really answer the question. It was the worst answer ever. So I thought, you know, seeing as I wrote a book called World Class Happiness, and I should really be an expert on the subject, I'm going to give a better answer on the channel. So so I've had a little think, and it's all up there. It's just my brain's a little bit slow. So so if somebody was to ask me that, and I'm a little bit more prepared, I would probably say lots of things, which is basically the answer that I give. However, I just want to elaborate on what I meant by that, really, because just saying lots of things doesn't really cut it, to be honest. But when I say lots of things, what I actually mean is it's not just one thing. All right. So a lot of the time people ask you a question like that, and expect one word, you know, one line or one answer. It's just one thing, or it's 5 things. You see these things all the time, you know, 5 rules to success and all that sort of thing, which I do actually quite like those, but because they kind of set them out in a kind of quite structured way. But happiness isn't really like that. You know, it's lots and lots of things, lots of small things that will over time make you happy. All right, now the reason why I'm bringing this up, because I've also been thinking about this. I think I was talking about this the other day to one of my coaches, and he, you know, he was my judo coach for a while, and he knew that maybe my weakest area at the time anyway was my self-belief. So he actually sent me along to a not exactly a sports psychologist, I guess, hypnotist, in London. And I went along, and I done maybe 2 or 3 days with a guy, you know, the whole day, and it was brilliant, really good. Got loads and loads out of it. I learned some stuff that I still use today, and it really was brilliant. And he must have spent quite a lot of money, to be honest, to get me this training, and it was great. It was brilliant. And prior to that, I'd often thought, you know, I was a little bit skeptical about hypnotism and psychology and stuff like that, because I'd always felt like, you know, when I tried to be positive, it didn't feel real, and it was kind of almost like it was almost a bit pretend. And you know, when I went on this course with this guy, it was a one-to-one thing, and I really felt it was beneficial. And then, you know, I was going to competitions quite soon after that, and doing really well using the techniques that I've been taught, and it was really good, and it worked, but only for that short period, and then gradually some of the things the lessons that he'd given me started to kind of drift from my head, and I wasn't really sort of following through on a lot of things, and gradually, you know, it was no longer working. And you know, I came to the conclusion that I always come to: it doesn't really work. It doesn't work. It's just, you know, people say it works and people pretend it works, but it doesn't. The reality is it doesn't actually work. And if it does work, it doesn't work as well as people say. But I was wrong. I was wrong. And the reason I'm wrong is because the answer was staring me in the face the whole time. Okay, I used to go to judo every single day, and I used to do the same things every single day. I used to do the same throws every single session. I used to do rolls and break falls every single session. I used to turn in and get my feet in exactly the same position every single session. And it wasn't like I didn't know it. Of course I knew it, but I still did it. I just, constantly did it and trained myself to do it just the same as a runner runs every day, a swimmer swims every day, and, and so on. And it just never really occurred to me that you had to do that with psychology as well. And it seems stupid when you actually think about it, and obvious, because if you wanted to get fit and you wanted to get muscular, say, you want to have a better body, you wouldn't think, right, I'm going to go to the gym for 2 days. 2 whole days I'll spend 8 hours in the gym, 2 days straight. And you could do that. You could spend obviously 16 hours just completely focused on training, working out, doing all sorts of weight training. But at the end of that 16 hours, you'd maybe feel, you'd ache probably, and you'd feel pretty good in the short term. But really after that 16 hours, you'd look in the mirror and there'd be no real change. There'd be no change. But if you were to go to the gym for 6 months for 20 minutes a day, after the 6 months you'd notice a difference. You'd notice possibly a big difference. And this is what I never understood. So becoming happier is kind of like that already. And I wrote the book initially because I was already happy and I wanted to find out why. And a lot of the reasons why I was happy was because it was stuff that I'd always done. It was stuff that I'd always practiced, I'd always trained, without even realizing that I was doing it. And it was just stuff that was a habit for me. And that was why I was already happy, and why I realized that a lot of people weren't happy, that they don't do things consistently. And I wasn't doing these things on purpose. But then it was obvious, because the things that I wasn't doing well were the areas where I wasn't so happy. So, I'm trying to do that now. So the things that I struggle with more, I'm now trying to force myself to do them. But it's not a case of, right, I'll go see somebody who's an expert in that and find out how to do it. And, you'll practice it for 2 days or 3 days or a week or whatever. You must consistently do it day after day after day. And if you don't, then that area never improves, or it doesn't improve to the extent that you want. Okay, so I feel like really that's the problem with happiness. People want to be happy and they like the idea of being happy, but they're not willing to invest the time in it because they don't think it's important. People will be willing to invest in, making money, or even things like entertainment. People will invest in entertainment, like the phones and Netflix and stuff like that, and people will invest in that. And probably people, what am I, 8 minutes in now? I can guarantee over half of you have already gone. You've already disappeared, because not because I'm boring necessarily. Maybe I am. Maybe I am boring, but there could be people who are a lot more charismatic than me who are saying a similar thing, which makes a lot of sense, and they'd have already switched off. And why is that? Because they kind of half want to be happy. They want to be happy, but they actually want to watch Netflix more. They actually want to go on their phone and watch silly videos more. And the thing is, if you really want to be happy, you've really got to invest time in it, and you've really got to work on it, and you've really got to look at videos, you've got to read books, you've got to change your habits, and you've got to do that consistently, and you've got to do it day after day after day after day. And that was how I actually really made a change in my life. And there are still areas that I haven't done that, and there's still areas that I'm kind of half in, and they're the areas where there's been less improvements or not enough improvement, and there are areas that I've really worked on, which is just my psychology, and just some stuff that really maybe sort of things to do with judo coaching, because I do that now with my boy, and I know where I went wrong. So I've kind of really invested a lot of my time into that, and like I say, general psychology and happiness, and how to kind of like there's I think I've maybe made a video on it before, but I got this from Tony Robbins, where people are happy if their life conditions meet their blueprint. So if this is the blueprint, and this is how they see how life should be, if their conditions match that, then they're happy in that area. If their conditions are actually higher than what they actually hoped for themselves, you know, then you're really happy. And if you're down here, then you're not happy. So that's the reason why certain people are happy or happy in certain areas and not in others, because if they're happy, then it matches their blueprint, or they're above where they thought they should be. And if they're not happy, then that's because that hasn't matched their blueprint, and that's not where it's meant to be. So so if you can recognize what your blueprint is, what you actually really want in life, instead of complaining about it and moaning and sort of like blaming other people or blaming the world or whatever, if you really want that, you need to invest in making the change. And that isn't necessarily with money. It could be, you know, by investing in things like courses and stuff like that, but it generally is just investing with your time, which is actually the most valuable thing we've got. However, if you really want to be happy, which in my opinion is the most important thing in the world, to be perfectly honest, because that affects everything, it's worth investing in, and you've got to invest your time. So I always do that by consistently trying to make good decisions, consistently trying to do, you know, what I know is right, and watch positive videos and videos that are teaching me, and I'm educating myself, and reading books. That's how I'm getting happier, and trying to either match my blueprint or surpass it. And there are many areas where I've really surpassed my blueprint, which is probably why I'm happy, and there are 1 or 2 areas where I'm still below. So they're the things that I need to work on. So that's basically it. That's the key to happiness. It's not one thing, it's not 5 things, it's lots and lots of little tiny things. But that little thing, that if you can just get that little bit better at it, and you do that with 50 things, then you're gradually just going to be growing and improving, and you know, that will make you happier in the long run. Okay, so yeah, progression, which is basically what I answered to Phil's question. Progression, definitely. Giving to people and making other people happy makes you happy, and trying to work out how to become better by putting all these little things into place. So that's my best answer, really, and hopefully you can take some of that on board after 13 minutes odd. I very much doubt I've got many people still watching to the end, and if you are still here, you're probably the ones who are investing more in your happiness, and hopefully you're going to be the ones who break through to a certain extent. Okay, so hopefully it helped, and hopefully I'll see you on another video. Cheers, guys.